Hey there, it's Jordan. I am off screen so we could show these three wonderful Starbucks workers who are in Buffalo fighting the good fight. And I've interviewed, I believe, two of you when I was there a week or so ago. But since I've left, seems Starbucks has kind of increased the temperature, shall we say. So we're going to get into all that. But let's start with the good. And Michelle, Gianna, and Jazz. So welcome. So yesterday, November 10th, ballots officially went out to begin this election process. Could you kind of talk about that? They are going out, from what I understand, to three workers in three stores, and the ballot. I think the process to vote is nearly a month. Is that correct?
It is. So the ballots need to be into the NLRB by December 8th. And then there's a live vote count, I believe, via Zoom on December 9th. And then we should have the results.
So before the ballots went out, Starbucks attempted a last-minute stay, in the legal jargon, to basically stop the election from going forward. What was the argument they were making to the court to try and stop the ballots from going out?
Basically, their argument was they didn't like the decision and they wanted to try to delay the election some more. The NLRB basically left them on red and didn't respond to their request, so the ballots went out as planned.
Well, okay. And I want to talk about this, whatever the hell it was, voluntary gathering at a hotel in Buffalo. It was voluntary, but I assume there was kind of a hint.
If you were scheduled for the shift that would have overlapped the event, there was additional pressure to go. I know with past anti-union meetings that they've said are voluntary, they actually told people they wouldn't be paid for the remainder of their shifts if they didn't go. I'm not 100% sure that they were telling people that for this one, but that's been their past practice.
Got it. So this gathering that they did, what was it framed as? What were they selling this as? Bringing partners together, a pre-Christmas gathering? What were they selling this as?
It was being mainly sold as a partner experience event, where they had a similar setup of small tables where there were a couple people stationed to discuss benefits and stuff beforehand and Starbucks' sustainability and such. And then after that, the main event was everyone sitting down to listen to Howard Schultz speak for 45 minutes.
So I want to talk about that because Howard Schultz, who he's not technically day-to-day running Starbucks, but he's still at the top of the company. I think he's Chairman Emeritus or some slum title. He went into a lecture about his tough childhood, was my understanding, and then got into some bizarre analogy about the Holocaust and how that is somehow linked to you guys. Could you kind of explain what his whole spiel was?
Yes. Well, first and foremost, his spiel was shockingly inappropriate. It was kind of appalling hearing it, and then also seeing other members of corporate wiping away like a single tear as he was speaking. When we just, I don't understand really where he was going with it, and to discuss such an awful event, a mass genocide, as a comparison to your generosity and sharing your blanket with your company as Starbucks. It certainly did not resonate with his audience.
Right. And let me just give you the actual words. He said, some workers who attended his talk were confused by a story he told about the Holocaust, in which he noted only a small portion of prisoners in German concentration camps received blankets, but often shared them with fellow prisoners. Quote, so much of that story is threaded into what we have tried to do at Starbucks is share our blanket. Well, besides the absurd and offensive Holocaust analogy, my assumption is if they were sharing enough of the blanket, you wouldn't be trying to form a union right now. My assumption is if you were actual partners in the sense of the word, you wouldn't have to do what you're doing.
That's appropriate. The tone, from my understanding, and I had a previous engagement, so I chose not to change my plans to attend this, was that the tone that he used throughout was that of a father lecturing their children on how grateful they should be to him for what he's already done, and how insulted he is that we should dare ask for more, which seems like a poor choice if you're here to try and stop something. I don't think coming in with that tone, I'm not sure when that tone has ever been used successfully. So
he also told a lot of workers at Starbucks, many of whom are paycheck to paycheck or struggling, that he still has shame and scars from having grown up poor, and told long stories about growing up in the projects and about how his dad had an injury and was out of work. And his takeaway was that that was a traumatic experience for him, not because like of being poor per se, but because of the perception and the stigma that he perceived as being poor. And our takeaway was that Howard's dad needed a union and he needs to stop union busting.
I like that. And Gianna, you actually stood up and asked him, well, I'll let you tell, but what did you stand up as he was giving these bizarre analogies and, you know, life lessons? What did you stand up and ask him?
I wanted to give him the respect, at least, to wait until he was done speaking, to stand up and ask him if he would sign the fair election principles that would call on Starbucks and have Starbucks promise that they wouldn't interfere and further union bust in our union drive and our union campaign. It mentions things such as equal time. Even if there isn't a legal obligation, there is a moral obligation to not act inappropriately as a business during a union election and to respect it, of which I couldn't even lift up the paper to show him that that's exactly what I had in my hand, because he was already turning tail out the door.
Wow.
He didn't even look me in the eye while I said my name, to introduce myself to him, which speaks volumes.
So was this at the end, like towards the end, where he could kind of plausibly, oh, I was on my way out anyway, or like this was abrupt, like ending now?
He could make the argument that he was out on his way, but he was ready to sit down in another chair to let the final closing speech occur. So he can make the argument, but it can easily be refuted.
And was there any, because, you know, the elephant in the room here is like an army of Starbucks executives have descended onto Buffalo, New York over the last few weeks, packing stores unnecessarily. Was there any mention of why they're there? Like,
their line has been, they're here to support us, but support is taking interesting forms. I think it's worth noting, sorry if this is a little bit of a tangent, but I think it's worth noting a huge chunk of Howard's speech was about the benefits that he then compared to Holocaust blankets. But it was about like Beanstalk and for college tuition and all those things. And then he kept saying, and no one forced us to do that. No one told us that we should do that. And then pivot to 2 days later in more anti-union meetings in the stores. And they actually broke those up into different sessions and barred the most vocal pro-union people like Michelle from coming into them. And there they were actually saying to people, especially those they thought were on the fence, that you could lose those benefits. So they set up like, here's the benefits, and then set up the threat of
having those taken away
if you vote for the union.